podcast, episode 730, I believe. In this one, we got Mark Zuckerberg sitting down with Joe Rogan. They're talking about how they control what's on the platform. They're basically talking about censorship. But, you know, when you're talking to Mark Zuckerberg, he's not going to position it as we censor people here and there. He's going to say we keep the platform safe here, we regulate content there. So, you know, that's how he's going to talk about it. What they also touch on, which I found was very interesting, is that Joe asks Mark, what is shadow banning? Is shadow banning a real thing? Does Meta practice shadow banning? Do these social media platforms practice shadow banning? Now, I know what your answer is, and my answer is the same, because I feel it a little bit. But let's hear what Mark has to say about all this. Let's get into this clip right now.
Program is working the way it's supposed to. I mean, the overwhelming majority of people in our community tell us that they don't want to see things that are kind of obviously false flowing through the system, right? It just decreases trust in the system. And if there was a way to get rid of that, then it's like people on both sides of the political spectrum would want that to be the case. I think where it ends up being an issue is when the fact checkers sort of veer towards getting into stuff that's not as obviously black and white and a little more political. I mean, a lot of the stuff that's blatantly wrong isn't necessarily even political. It's just like stupid shit. And it's so I think that those are the areas that I've seen that become the most controversial.
How do you make decisions when, like, I can understand the wanting to stop the spread of misinformation, but there's certain things that are so dumb where I feel like they should be allowed to be spread, like flat Earth. Like if someone has a flat Earth theory, God, I want to listen. I want to listen because it's so dumb. I want to know, how does someone start to form these ideas? Because there's a thriving community. I don't know if you know, if you ever Google hashtag space is fake.
I have not.
You should. There's a
large
large group of humans out there that believe that we live in some sort of a dome and that there's like essentially
like
light bulbs hung in the sky. It's so dumb. But I mean, like, what do you do about that? Like, if I was running Facebook, I would let that stay. I would leave that in there. That's so dumb.
So one important nuance on this, though, is we don't block misinformation. We basically just have a label that goes on it that says that a fact checker says this is false, and show it a little bit less in the ranking and newsfeed.
But don't you stop a person's ability to share something with that tag?
You can share it. You can share it.
But what if someone is a person that is known to spread certain misinformation? Don't you make it so you can't tag that person?
It depends on what the stuff is. We can go super deep on all the nuances. There's misinformation that could lead to harm, right? So misinformation that veers on things that lead to violence or health safety that we treat in one way. And then there's just misinformation, like stuff that's wrong that people say reduces trust in the system when they see it, but that we have no reason to believe is going to lead to any like physical safety issue for people. And that we just treat differently. I mean, that it's like, yeah, we'll put a label on it. We'll, if we have the choice to either show your cousin's, giving birth photo or that, we'll kind of show the other content above it. But fundamentally, we're not going to prevent you from sharing it or prevent people from seeing it.
You know, when Jack Dorsey and I had a conversation about this, one of the things he said that he was in favor of and was trying to promote the idea of two versions of Twitter. He wanted to have a moderated Twitter, and then he wanted to have a Wild West Twitter. Like he wanted to have something where it's like 4chan or something, just like let people do whatever they want and just open up those barn doors, and as soon as you go in there, it's chaos. Like, what do you think about that? And do you think that there's an important function of content moderation, that to set a tone? I mean, you can kind of see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the tough thing is, so there's like, most of the categories of harmful content are things that I think almost everyone would agree on, right? So it's like you don't want foreign nations interfering and stuff like the bot networks. You don't want terrorism. You don't want child pornography. You don't want like blatant intellectual property violations. You don't want people promoting violence. Okay, so you go through all this stuff. I think that's most of that stuff I actually think is not that controversial, right? It's like people want it gone, and they expect us to, as a technology company that operates at scale, to be able to do this reasonably well. So then I think that there are a couple of issues. One is, sometimes those systems get that stuff wrong, and we say that something is bad when it wasn't, or we miss something that is bad. So I think that there's that type of issue, which is like you just make an operational mistake, which is important, but is kind of one type of issue. Then I think you get into the types. There are a couple of types of issues, and I think misinformation is probably the biggest one, where there is actually just not widespread agreement at all about how to handle it. I think that large percent of the population, the vast majority says that they don't want to see misinformation, but then people disagree on what misinformation is, right? So, so people don't want to see what people don't want to see what they think is misinformation, but honestly, even more than that, they don't want other people to be kind of to see what they think is misinformation. So I think that's pretty difficult because then different people have different views, and I think that I mean, maybe you could have a policy like what Jack was talking about for that type of content. I mean, I don't think you're going to have a Wild West version of social media where you're just allowing terrorism free for all. I mean, that's crazy.
Well,
right?
the Taliban is on Twitter, which is really wild because Donald Trump isn't.
Yeah, tough for. I'm not super deep on Twitter's policies, so tough for me to comment on that. But
Twitter has pornography. I mean, they have hardcore pornography. You could just accidentally stumble onto someone you follow's page. And
so that's something that just is more of going back to your point around just for the community feel.
Mm-hmm.
Pornography is a thing that we don't allow, and I think it's somewhat controversial because I mean it's like you could make a pretty good argument. I think that like this isn't doing physical harm to people. I mean I know that there's sides to that, so I don't want to go super deep on that. But I'd say our reason for not wanting pornography is more for the feel of the community than kind of the sense of harm. Well, and pornography is different. That's obviously real harm. But I think that's one category of content where it's kind of more of an editorial moderation decision. I don't think it's a political decision. It's more of like we want the feel of the service to be about people connecting with their friends and family and not necessarily coming across that kind of content. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of, I think, how the whole thing breaks down. I mean, there's most of the stuff that I think gets taken down. Actually, most people would agree needs to get taken down. And then I think there's mistakes. And then there's stuff like how do you handle misinformation, which I think society as a whole doesn't agree on. So my basic approach to that is give people choice and try, like, so basically don't take it down, but basically let people share the stuff, but also flag if an accredited fact checker said it might be false, and also get us, that we shouldn't be the ones deciding what's true and false. So kind of try to set up this independent governance to do that. I think it's a pretty well balanced system. It's not perfect. We'll need to keep on iterating on it and making it better over time. But those are the basic principles for kind of how I think about navigating that.
One thing that people freak out about.
So give me 30 seconds. They're going to go into shadow banning now. But with everything he just said, first of all, he sounds like he does not know. He sounds like he's never been in the office at all. But beyond that, he talks about fact checkers. So there's lines. So you got to go through the fact checkers. Then you got to go through the guidelines. Then if your fact check comes up false, which has been proven, they've already proven that the fact checkers, they're just opinions. They're not actually fact checking. Community Notes on X is way better than these fact checkers because they're going based on their opinion. It's like somebody who's a liberal looking at your right-leaning post and just giving their opinion on it. What do you think it's going to be? False. So that's absolute nonsense. But then he also says that they limit it. They limit it. And when they say limit, here's the thing. They can just go like this. We're not going to ban it or anything. We're not going to ban the person. But listen, they can reach 10,000 people right now. We're just going to make it so they can reach 5. It's like you're not limiting it. You're not actually censoring them, but you are. You really, really are. You're just taking your liberty and just making it as far down the barrel as possible. That's what's really going on. It's just such an annoying topic. Let's get back into shadow banning.
And oftentimes I'm a little skeptical of their concerns, is people think they're being shadow banned. It's always people think they're being shadow banned. Like, is shadow banning a real thing? And what does that mean?
Well, I mean, there's no policy that is shadow banning, so I think it's sort of a slang term, but that maybe refers to some of the demotions that we're talking about, right? So if someone posts something that gets marked as false by a fact checker, then it'll get somewhat less shown in
just that post, or all of their posts for the future.
I think that there's, if you do it once, then it's that, and then I think if there's like some history within a page, or there's kind of different rules for pages and groups and different things, then there can be some kind of broader policy that applies. But when I look into this stuff, because I mean, a lot of my friends and people I know just send me examples, because unfortunately there are a lot of mistakes. I mean, I think part of the issue is that, okay, if there's 3.5 billion people using these services, and if we make, a mistake 0.1% of the time, that's like still millions of mistakes, right? So it's like, so there's all these cases, and that sucks, right? It's like, so there are all these cases where we missed something that we should have taken down, or we enforce something that we weren't supposed to. But I'd say, as it relates to kind of concerns about shadow banning, a lot of the time when I look into stuff, people attribute some motive or like, this is like Meta has some stupid policy in place that blocked this, or they're banning this thing. And a lot of the time, it was either just a mistake, so nothing was supposed to happen, but like there was some bug in the system, or some system didn't work the way it was supposed to, which is a real issue, but it's not an ideological issue. And a lot of the time, also, when people are worried about stuff like shadow banning, it actually like maybe their post just wasn't as good or something, and it just didn't get the distribution that they wanted it to.
I have to jump in here because that's nonsense. So basically, what he's saying is anytime anything comes up that seems like shadow banning, it is either a mistake or a bug, or it's your fault. We're not taking liability for any of this because we know we're not allowed to shadow ban people. None of these platforms are allowed to do that, but they do. Believe me, I know for certain. It's so crazy that he's doing that. That's exactly what I mean. That's what pharma does. They blame the addict. If something happens with anything that they give out, if somebody perhaps passes away, they go, oh, well, that person, they were addicted and they did too much. It's their fault. This guy's doing the same thing. It's like, you know what? Maybe your content's just not good enough. And then it's like, what is good enough? Well, it's like it has to follow the guidelines. It has to be fact checked. It has to be this. It has to be that. And if it falls under everything we say is good content, well, then it may get the distribution that it deserves. But if you're not under what we say is good content, well, I mean, I don't know, maybe a bug just jumped up and did something to your content. Anyway, let's keep going. Sorry.
But I don't know. I mean, you highlighted some examples to me a few weeks ago of someone who was saying that they couldn't follow your account or something, and you posted it, and I mean, so I looked into it because I'm like, okay, I'm going to see Joe soon, and I kind of want to understand what these issues are, and it like that's an example where it's it had nothing to do with your account. It was basically there was some bug, and that person had kind of taken a bunch of actions quickly or something, and we basically just for spam protection stopped them from taking a bunch of actions. But it's so I think people sometimes read in some ideological bent or policy thing into this that I think often isn't there. But unfortunately, there just are, because the scale is so big. There are going to be millions of mistakes. You're going to be able to find almost any pattern that you want in that much data. So I haven't figured out how to crack that nut of kind of communicating. It's
also an interesting problem because there's people don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. So there's this sort of in their eyes a lack of transparency. It's how does this all work? So they assume there's nefarious intentions and that someone's censoring them.
Yeah. I mean, do you have any, I'm curious how you'd think about this if you were in my position.
I thought about it. I would imagine it would be incredibly overwhelming, and I'd probably be on Xanax. I don't know.
Or you just work out more.
Yeah, I'd work out more.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Joe avoids that question. He actually doesn't go into his answer of what he would do in the situation. But I think he made it clear in the beginning that he would just let stuff that seemed very dumb just kind of ride because, why not? It's so dumb. It's so obviously dumb. Man. So silly what goes on with these platforms. I shouldn't even say silly. It's more sinister because if somebody's making a living and their livelihoods on there and then all of a sudden they just go, this thing didn't work out, this thing's not right, and all of a sudden it's there's just a bug in our system. Sorry. Maybe your content should be better. I don't know. And it's okay, I'll just post videos of puppies. And it's good, let's do that. The advertisers will like that. I mean, there's just a bug in the system. Yeah, don't worry. I think what happened with Joe's account is very obvious, especially now that we know what we know about fact checkers, is that a lot of these fact checkers had very liberal biases. Now, why do we know that? Because of where Facebook is and where they were getting these fact checkers. A lot of California type people. I'll just say that. So these people were very biased. They saw Joe Rogan's account. If you follow Joe Rogan on anything, you know what he posts. It's hunting, it's steak, it's deer, it's things that could be classified as misinformation. It's calling things out as he sees them. It's overall weird stuff. Someone saw it. They had an opinion of Joe Rogan. What do you think most people who are very liberal, progressive think about Joe Rogan? Not much. And what do you think they did from there? They just went, bug in the system. I don't know. Something happened. Because now I bring up the fact of Tim Kennedy. I just did an episode not that long ago about Tim Kennedy. It's going to be on X soon. I just did an episode on Tim Kennedy. He's explaining what happens with him when he's on Instagram. People search for him, he doesn't come up. There's many fake accounts that come up first before him, which makes no sense at all because he's the only one with millions of followers. The rest have 10, 20, maybe 100. That's it. They all come up before him. When you go to follow him, it says the person you're about to follow is known to spread misinformation. And then when you follow him, you can't share a lot of the content that he shares. You can't share with someone else. So when they talk about this whole thing of there's no shadow banning and there's, we're not really blocking we're not really censoring anybody. It's within the guidelines that they're following so they don't get in trouble. That's what it is. That's why he's chalking it up to bugs in the system. And, there's just, millions of mistakes. Like, well, what can we say? Because so many people, where it is a mistake, they don't get their account rectified. You get your account taken down over something that turned out to be really true and you try to get it back from them. Not happening. Not happening. There was somebody who actually went through a lawsuit with X when it was Twitter about that exact same thing. Alex Berenson. He said a lot of different things and it turned out he was telling the truth and he sued X and he won. And now he's suing the White House as well. And he's more than likely going to win because the White House actually requested to the old Twitter to censor him. Like, what are they going to do about him? They wanted him banned, which they actually got. So this stuff goes deep. To suggest shadow banning is not a real thing, I think is complete nonsense. It's a very real thing. We see it all the time. We see accounts. Not to brag. I've had people be like, hey, how does your channel not have more subscribers? And I'm like, I don't know. How were you doing 3 million views a month just 2 months ago? And then you cover a few things on Russell Brand and all of a sudden now you can't get past 600,000 views a month. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't even be saying that. I don't know. But it's very obvious that censorship is afoot. Tucker Carlson says that censorship is the last grasp that the establishment has before it loses control. I think that's very true because the fact that we can share information so readily, so many people can watch this, you can go and make your own content and so many people will see it. You can take this content, share it with more people. You can do all sorts of things quickly nowadays. Find your information fast, accurate. It is the last grasp that they have to control how the narratives come out, to control what information gets to the top and what doesn't. I mean, I have to go and just say right now, there's a show that's coming out on YouTube by this guy, Adam22, where him and his wife are looking for a partner so the three of them can do adult scenes together. It's been approved. It's gonna be on YouTube. But you're telling me if somebody else does something that's not even on the scale of what I'm talking about, it's a reality show, like The Bachelor. Yeah, it's a show. It's coming out. I just saw an advertisement for it. It's like, why? I asked the question again. I asked this question just a couple episodes again. Why are so many things that are degenerative, ignorant, terrible for society allowing to come to the top? Silly things that are just mind mush allowed to come to the top, and the things that are of substance are pushed down. The things that are thought-provoking are pushed down. The things that can provide self-sufficiency, can provide critical thinking, all of them are pushed down. Conversations that need to be heard, all of them are pushed down. Why? It's you think it would be great having the CEO or founder of Meta on a podcast. You think it would be this great experience, but he has no answers. He has zero answers. And he doesn't want to take any liability. He doesn't want to put his company on the line for anything. You know why? Because there'd be millions of people that could sue. Millions. And I'm still working on an episode. There was a big document released of every tweet, 4chan, TikTok that was being censored. And I'm gonna actually go to each one of them. It's gonna be a long video, but the things that they were censoring and probably still are absolutely crazy. Anyways, guys, I keep forgetting. I keep saying it at the end. If you've watched till now, you're one of my people. Thank you so much. Emails, trying to get emails because of this exact topic. What's going on? How they decide to just flip a switch and all of a sudden it's like everything's done for you. If you're a content creator and your livelihood's here, you're trying to support your family here. So I'm trying to collect emails because I think we're going to come to a point where I actually have to directly communicate with the people who enjoy this content. And I'm going to have to think of some kind of strategy, whether it's X or Patreon or something that's completely independent of any system. We have to think of something. Yeah. It's rough. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, and I'm out.